What does it take to win an award with VR? My guest knows because he's done just that. I'm Tanya Hall for ZDNet, and joining me is Tim Dillon. He is the head of VR and immersive content at MPC. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, how you doing? Nice to be with you.
Thank you again for joining me all the way from Austin, Texas, and South by Southwest. What does MPC do?
MPC is Moving Picture Company. We go by MPC as our short name, as our brand name. We are a visual effects studio of 25 years. We recently picked up an Oscar, actually, on our film side for our work on Blade Runner, and have had other credits like Jungle Book and other big Hollywood VFX movies. But it's much broader than that. It's also content of all types, including immersive content, which is the group that I head up.
And you've got a pretty interesting title, of course, very fitting for the type of work that you do, but as head of VR and immersive content, what does that mean?
Head of VR and immersive content really means we're looking at all types of VR projects. And then the immersive content part is augmented reality, it's installations, it could be events, it could be even projects that have real world crossovers with actual people and actors and props.
You are speaking, as I mentioned, you're there in Austin right now, and you're speaking at, you've got a panel on the next phase of VR, moving to MR. Give us a preview of what your panel looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be interesting. I'm there with a director that we've worked with called Justin Denton, and also another collaborator, Jackie Bosniak. And we're being interviewed and talking on the panel about our thoughts on where this is going. You know, where is the future of VR and how is that moving to mixed reality, which really means where are the devices and the hardware going? You know, where does a HoloLens or any other augmented reality device take us in the next year or two, I think.
Is a year or two a realistic time frame? I mean, I think it should be, last year, right? I think it should be already, but I mean, are we really ready for that next step?
I wish it was last year. I mean, we've been doing projects with the HoloLens device specifically. We were at Sundance last year with the HoloLens device doing a project called Heroes, which was great. We had people there at the film festival getting into that for the first time, and it was a dance performance, photogrammetry piece, so it was kind of a mixed media piece. But you learn a lot from taking these types of projects to public-facing festivals like Sundance, like South by Southwest, which we're going to be speaking at in a few days' time. So I think it's not there yet in terms of the public showing of an augmented reality, a mixed reality device. And it's going to take another year or two, but on that road, we're going to see lots of interesting things, lots of different projects, some of them commercial, some of them more functional, I guess.
If the next phase is mixed reality, how do we get there? I mean, how do we get from where we are now to a more immersive phase?
I think mixed reality means literally that. So you're looking at reality through one of these devices, but I think, and I think other people define it this way too, mixed reality is the device you're wearing or holding, sensing the world, and then bringing those things together. And actually, mixed reality, the term started with a lot of the videos we were all seeing, you know, like tilt brush videos where you see the user painting and it's composited together. That was mixed reality, but I think quickly that's become a wider term for anything where the device is somewhat conscious of the environment. It's not sticking something onto the environment. I think it's reading what's going on and there being some kind of feedback loop. And so we work on these projects that try to push the hardware and the concepts into a more mixed universe. So is an actor and a digital object aware of each other, and you know, how does that affect a story?
You mentioned Sundance and trying to, scale differently for a larger audience. And it's been said that in order for VR to be successful in the home, it has to be successful outside the home. So what's the solution? I mean, how do you scale up immersive theater to the masses?
I mean, immersive theater is a specific vein, right? I think the broad category that people are calling it as experiences. Generally those could be the type of piece we saw The Void and Star Wars launch with Disney just recently, or it could be something like the Dreamscape Immersive guys with their Alien Zoo concept. And these feel like pop-ups. These are certainly the one I just mentioned for Void and Star Wars. That's the most established of these types of projects. They're great. They're in shopping malls. They're taking VR to people rather than expecting people to come to VR, which I think is smart. I think we're seeing that through our work, that people are interested, but they don't want to have to work really hard to get into the content, which I think is true of cinema, true of TV. If you look at the Netflix models and what's popular, I think VR can learn from what people want and how they want to get it. And I think so location-based VR and the idea of taking it to shopping malls or taking it to theme parks is bringing the content to people, giving them an experience or getting them to understand what it is, so that if you were entertaining the idea of buying a headset, whether that's this year, next year, or the year after, you have a rough idea of what you're buying. Right now, I think there's a lot of people out there who aren't 100% sure what they're getting from a PlayStation VR or an Oculus Rift,
Mm-hmm. You did an excellent job, and congratulations on your Lumiere Award that you won last month for The Last Goodbye. That was an excellent piece and really did take people into that Holocaust experience, if you will. What makes an award-winning VR content?
It's interesting. I think quality is important. And thank you, by the way, for that. That's very kind of you. I think quality is really important. And that means quality of the experience. So is it technically running at frame rate? Are you experiencing any nausea? And these are basic entry level, development problems, but which are solved. If we are making the right content right now, there's no reason for you to feel in any way nauseous in a 6 degrees of freedom piece of content, and where you're being tracked in a Vive or a Rift. But I think quality is important to people, but also in the case of The Last Goodbye, it was a documentary piece that was pushing into new territory. So it's photogrammetry of a camp that scanned a real place in Poland, the Medenik, and then a single person story, a testimony of this survivor, Pinkas Guta. So it's a documentary piece in that he's talking to you, but you're also there experiencing the world. And I think those ingredients done at the right quality make it an award-winning piece. But I think also people award projects for their originality, for their innovation, I guess, and pushing into a new territory. So would we create The Last Goodbye the same way next year and the year after? Probably not. It will evolve and become a different piece,
You mentioned, I'm going to say it, you mentioned nausea and dizziness. And I remember when, trying VR for the first time, it was, kind of a different experience. But I guess my question would be, are there VR rules that shouldn't be broken to try to avoid some of those things?
I think we're still figuring that out. And it's been a few years now of us making content. And there are some emerging rules. And I think filmmakers and creators, actually, of all kinds, will break those rules because they want to, and they should. They absolutely should. And we're part of that experimentation and R&D as well. But actually, yeah, it's emerging that pushing people around, locomotion, meaning, moving a camera when our head is the camera, is some people are sensitive to that, some people aren't. We're in a lucky position where we see a lot of projects, we test a lot of things, and you can see where those trends emerge. But yeah, so moving the camera is certainly a theme there, but actually a lot of other things are wide open in terms of how you teleport around a space, about how you tell a story around someone. There's a lot of different projects doing that in different ways right now.
We've been playing with these devices and experiencing this technology for a few years now, but yet not everyone still quite gets it. So how savvy are your clients, and how do you help them understand when they come to you and say, I want to use this product, I want to do this, but they really don't know what they need? How do you help them understand the potential?
It's really important. It's a good question. It's really important to jump into headset right away. And I think actually if you speak to a lot of other VR creators, that's a theme that you hear from people, is that it's important in any given meeting to get in a headset, to look at something, to talk about it, because it's a hard thing to explain, the feeling of being in an environment, being transported there, and then getting the natural magical feeling of being in a headset that's being tracked and you getting that 6 degrees of freedom parallax. But it's also important to be in a headset and talking about it in the right way. You can have hours and hours of meetings talking about what you might do, but I think prototyping and getting clients, for us anyway, getting clients in a headset is the quickest we can, is the best thing we can do. But yes, I think to your question, our clients are becoming more savvy. We're certainly working with clients this year that last year and the year before hadn't seen as many things. A lot of people who are just interested in this space or have tried Tilt Brush, they've tried Google Earth VR, they've tried Superhot, they've tried the kind of AAA hits of VR and that you can get in a PlayStation or a Rift or a Vive, you know? So that helps us a lot, but what we're doing is not recreating those things. So then you use that as a launch pad.
Okay. Tim, what's your favorite immersive experience? What do you like?
That's a tough one. It changes all the time, but I would say right now it's anything social. So anything that you can connect with people. So recently at Sundance, Within and Tyler Hurd, the director, and within the company released or showcased a piece called Chorus, where 5 or 6 people can go on a ride together, and it's all set to a music video, but it's a kind of a character-driven piece. You can all talk to each other. Similar, actually, to the piece that Within made called Life of Us. I don't know if you've come across that, which is also a multiplayer of 2 people going on a journey and talking to each other. Being in a headset or being in an environment and then being there with someone else, I think is a really interesting dynamic. And I think it's probably why people like Mark Zuckerberg are saying things like, this is the future of computing and this is the future of what Facebook is interested in, because it's more about the people than it is about the technology.
You know, and it's beautifully done sometimes. Spike Jones just completed a piece for Apple's HomePod, and it really was beautiful. But is that kind of work enough to drive sales, or do we just think it's pretty?
I think it is pretty, something like that Spike Jones HomePod advert, and we make that type of work too outside of our immersive work. As MPC, we're also involved in lots of commercials and that filmmaking craft. We made a piece here for Samsung last year, which had a photoreal ostrich that gets its head stuck in a Gear VR and then learns how to fly, which got a lot of attention. And those types of immersive related or VR related commercials, I think, are helpful in terms of people being interested. But also, I think in the case of the recent Apple HomePod advert, it's just an immersive piece of content that is good looking. And I think I'd love to see that in VR and not just on a screen,
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, every successful medium has a predecessor, right? So, television replaced radio. I would say certainly there is opportunity for VR to replace something. What is VR replacing?
It's an interesting one. I don't know if VR is replacing anything. There's a conversation rolling in our industry about VR in comparison to mixed reality. So really meaning a device that you can see through as opposed to being in a closed world. And my personal opinion is that's a sliding scale, and eventually we'll have devices that can do both of those things in one device. And if you want to dial that down and be in a closed off, fully enveloped world, you will. And if you want to dial that back up and see one object on the table on the other side of the room. So from that perspective, that vision of the future is a replacement for smartphones. And I think that is a different way of thinking about things. That's a longer 5 to 10 year vision, I would say, of when people would rather pull out a pair of glasses and scroll through or engage with their content in their glasses than pull out their phone. But if you think back, it was strange at one point when people were pulling out phones and just staring at them in the street. And now we don't care about that. So these things evolve.
They do. You know, I really appreciate your time, and I'm so glad that you took some time out of fun Texas, of barbecue and cowboy hats and country music to join us. If somebody wants to connect with you, how can they go about doing that, Tim?
I think Twitter would be a great place, actually. So I'm Tim Dillon 78 on Twitter if anyone wants to connect.
And thanks again. If you want to follow me in more of my interviews, you can do that right here on ZDNet or Tech Republic, or maybe find me on Twitter. I like to tweet. I'm at Tanya Hall Radio, or find me on Facebook by searching for The Tanya Hall Show. Until next time.